Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, Mariel Buckley. Buckley is a Canadian singer-songwriter based in Nashville. Her new album is called Strange Trip Ahead. It is fantastic. You did not hear me gush. I edited this part out, gushing over how much I love the album before we started the official podcast recording. Again, it is called Strange Trip Ahead. It starts off with a fantastic song, Vending Machines. And I had on her friend, William Prince, on the pod about a month ago, and he was talking about how much of a fan. I mean, they are friends, but how great she is. And I thought, wow, I should have her on the pod, and that's why we're here. We talked a lot about ritual, and if you've listened to this podcast at all, I always bring up the Agatha Christie quote about how she said the best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes. And lo and behold, Buckley used to work in a kitchen. She was a cook and washed dishes, and talked about how many song ideas she got when she was washing dishes. I thought that was amazing, a real life example of that. But that speaks to the whole idea of when we get those eureka moments. The other thing I want to bring up here, and that is she said she made a conscious effort to be more disciplined in this album, and I think in general, because she said her ideas were getting stale and she was writing from the same place. The material she found was getting repetitive when she was waiting for inspiration to strike. And so she's now making a much more conscious effort to be more disciplined and to get up and write every day. The other thing she mentions is she's someone who admittedly has always written very comfortably from a depressive place, and she's now trying to write from a more joyful place. And I think that's reflective in the songwriting. So anyway, love the new album by Mariel Buckley. It is called Strange Trip Ahead, and enjoy this episode. Are you an everyday type of writer or just writing when the mood strikes?
It kind of depends. I'm working towards this phase of my career to try and be more disciplined. I definitely spent the first little bit of my career, I'm kind of 10 or 12 years in, really wanting inspiration to find me, which I think is a bit of a naive approach. So I would wait around to be super struck by something. Of course, I'm 3 records in now, and I just know for a fact that it's work. It's got to be treated like work. So I've been making a more intentional move to sit down and try and jot something out every day, even if it's not complete. Yeah, so a little column A, a little column B. I would say my best work typically happens when I am struck, but those moments are fleeting, as I'm sure you're aware.
But what made you decide to do that? I mean, and I asked because I had on Hayes Carl. I've had him on a few times, and Hayes is a friend of mine. And he for years, like I've had him on 3 times. And the first 2 times, this was like 10, 12 years ago, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm horribly undisciplined. I wish I weren't, but I am." And then I had him on about 6 months ago, and he's a changed man. He was like, "I realized that wasn't working." So I'm curious, because I also think, before you answer, and my thought on that is like, I would love to be more disciplined like you, but maybe that's just not who I am. So I don't know if I can change. So how optimistic are you? How is that going, I guess?
I think it's measuring success in small degrees for me. I would say that, you know, the real change from within, I really wanted to make a more conscious effort to be more disciplined because I found that my material was getting repetitive, and I found that I was writing from the same place a lot of the time when I would wait for that inspiration to strike. Um, and what I'm realizing, again, after looking at a collection of songs, is that when you start to repeat yourself too much, there can be a signature that people really grab onto, and that's something what they want to come back to. And so you want to keep giving that to some extent. But there also has to be growth and introspection in new places of life as you get older and all that other kind of stuff. So really what it was is just trying to push myself to find, I guess, different corners of my brain that I wasn't accessing, and I thought by trying to make it more intentional, by trying to do it every day, I might uncover some new stuff. And yeah, I don't know that I'll ever be a sit down like Jackson Brown and write from 9 to noon and have lunch and then plunk away on one line from 1 to 5 kind of person, but even just the act of, like, journaling for 30 minutes or, playing through a song that I didn't write or anything in the creative realm that gets me to write something down, every day is where I'm trying to start, and as long as I can be, you know, consistent with that, then I think, I'll be happy with the progress.
So was the repetition in the themes? What is it? Was it the music? What was it that was seemed repetitious to you?
I mean, a lot of it is the themes, yeah, and I think that also comes down to me. I struggle with, like I think most artists and people in our line of work, I struggle with some mental illness stuff, and there's the repetitive themes also come from me not expanding my outer world, and changing certain patterns that I'd gotten really comfortable in. So, as someone who writes very comfortably from a depressive place, I really wanted to challenge myself to write about things that are joyful, things that are exciting, writing in the daytime as opposed to the dark of the morning or the dark of the night. Um, yeah, so I think I just noticed that there were too many repeating themes that I didn't want to necessarily get rid of them, but I wanted to either find a new way to talk about them, um, or just shed light on something else.
Are you a long time you mentioned journaling. Have you been a long time journaler?
No, not at all. It's a recent practice. When I was young, I've been writing forever, and I had lots and lots of journals when I was kind of 8 to 17. That was what I would do with most of my time. And then in my 20s, I just fell off completely. I never had a journal or anything like that. I felt weirdly self-conscious about it, I think, which is that strange thing I think that happens when you start to release music, is just that you're being perceived outwardly so much that you don't I didn't wanna do it at home any more than I needed to. But now I've started to do it again, from a much less ego-involved place, and it's been really fruitful so far.
Is the journaling separate from songwriting? Is it a way to get songwrite ideas, or is it a way just to do compartmentalize that and separate it from songwriting entirely?
No, I would say it's definitely trying to go part and parcel with the songwriting. In some ways, it just helps me get some stuff out of my head to clear that path for, kind of the flow that I want to enter if I'm going to try and write something. Um, yeah, so it kind of just depends, but I would say that it's important to me to keep it all together.
Is there I don't journal. It's funny. I don't. I wish I did. I'm probably not going to, but I admire people that do. Um, uh, are, are there certain I guess what would I call like schools of journaling? Like some people have a prompt, or do you just sit down and yeah? How does that work?
I think I literally just Googled morning pages one day and was like, oh, I'm just going to try that. So it's basically just I get out of bed, around 7 or sometimes like 6, and I'll just sit down and try and write a page without thinking a whole lot about it. And then sometimes after coffee, I'll go back and tootle around. But it's usually just getting out of bed, not looking at my phone, and trying to get something on paper as soon as possible. And I found that to be really helpful so far.
So with how did you establish the discipline the discipline of the writer? Was it, "I'm gonna sit down for a certain amount of time every day?" Uh, how did that work?
I mean, I will say I'm still not as disciplined as I would like to be. I'm probably only doing it about 3 times a week, which is still better than it was. But the discipline comes from, if I don't do it, I find that I am unhappier throughout the
Mm.
day. And again, as someone who really has to monitor that intake of what's going into my brain and what's being fed in there, it can't be the phone first thing. So my discipline really comes from a place of just wanting to get out of that pit of sort of despair, because if we get on the scroll machine right away, it's just I will just disappear. It's so easy to get sucked in.
It's funny you say that because this is something that I'm hearing a lot from songwriters now. It feels like in the past year, and really songwriters, young ones too, early 20s, who have talked about, I got to get off the phone because it's affecting my creative process. And I heard this, I interviewed Robin Hitchcock probably 10 years ago, and he mentioned it back then. He was the first person to say it. He said, it's destroying my creative process because it's not good and it's unhealthy. And he's obviously older, but even he recognized that. And wow, like that was 10 years ago. But there seems to be a movement now to kind of get away from it because of realizing uh, how can I engage with my environment and write about things if I'm staring at a screen the whole time?
Totally. And it's the balance also between understanding it's a necessary tool for the business the way that it's set up right now, but also, really needing to take time away from the actual feed of it. Because I know, MJ Lenderman, who I'm a huge fan of, I think said that after his recent success, that was, I mean, he's been around forever, he's been great forever, but his recent record really popped. And I think when that happened, he said, I don't want to do this part of my job anymore, because it's just poison. So I think you're totally onto something. It's something on a lot of our minds for sure.
Are you a seasonal writer? And by seasonal, I mean literally the seasons of the calendar. Uh, some songwriters tell me, I think I had Samantha Crane, I had her on a few months ago, and I think she had
Oh,
mentioned
good.
like literally seasonal, the calendar seasons, not kind of metaphorical seasons, but do you find you're more productive? And I ask because like I said before we started officially recording, I've been to Edmonton in those winters, and I'm curious how much that seasonal or even sunlight affects your productivity.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I would say forever and probably will continue. My most prolific seasons are the fall and winter. And like you said, it's because we get such a crazy winter that is so depressing. It just locks you inside. The temperatures are crazy. There's no sunlight. It's a great place to get inside yourself, and but it can be a bit depressing. But yeah, certainly winter. I usually find a pretty good bulk.
That's not the answer I was expecting, by the way. Well, only I was expecting it. Oh yes, I write well when there's sunlight and the days are longer.
No.
Um, that's really funny. So you recognize that and you're more prolific in those long when those days when with the I know then what's the shortest day of the year in Edmonton? It's how
The
many hours?
21st of December, and I think it's very short, less than 8 hours, I wanna say. So it's, yeah, I think it's funny, but because of the way that I write, and you know the songs, they have that sort of melancholy to them. I think that's just also the way my brain has always worked, that, those quiet times when people can't be outside sort of frolicking and whatever are really important to me. They're a time of reflection, and, they're also a time that we're feeling really isolated, which is, I think, another thing that is important to me to write about, because my stuff is kind of trying to connect with people that maybe feel similarly.
So can you write from a place of euphoria? Or is that do you or is that difficult? I mean, not write about euphoric topics necessarily, but it's so interesting to me because my reaction is, oh, I can write when I'm in an elevated state because I feel like "Yeah, ready to go, like let's do it, like I'm pumped."
Yeah.
But that's so interesting. It sounds like that's not you at all.
No, and I think that's, again, that's sort of something I'm trying to look at, not necessarily changing, but trying to grow and expand into, because my good friend William Prince, who I know you interviewed, he talks a lot about joy and about learning to be comfortable as people that both come from like kind of difficult upbringings. I think there's like a natural state that you fall into where it's more comfortable. And I enter into more of a zen-like state when things are sad and difficult, because I think that was a lot of what was sort of not comfortable but expected when I was young. But as an adult, and especially now in my 30s, I'm really trying to lean into gratitude and finding places to write from when I'm feeling in upper spirits. It's tough, but you know what? There's a lot more sunlight in Tennessee. And so I've found there's been a little bit more in that direction, which is great.
When you write from those places of melancholy, um, do you go back afterwards and look at those things and say, maybe I have to tweak that because it was a little too melancholy? And I guess I asked another way to ask that is, do you need distance to be able to write about something? So is do you need distance, or are you more effective writing about the immediacy? So, because they always tell you, like, when you write an email to someone and you're angry, write it and then wait a day before you send it, because there's probably stuff that you would regret sending if you. So I'm curious with songs, if that makes sense, that when you're writing things, then you go back and say, ah, that's a little too heavy. I need to tweak that.
Uh, Again, I think it's case dependent, but I would say most often I think that that raw capture is something I'm angling for. I think it's something I want. And it's something, again, it's sort of a signature thing that I really like. Um, there definitely have been times where I'll go back and think I could say that in a different way that might communicate what I was actually feeling more effectively. Um, but some of my best songs, in my opinion, have come from like as I say, like an almost meditative sadness where I'm immediately in a feeling and I'll just pick up my guitar and start humming and then something very quickly will come out. So yeah, I think I'm pretty comfortable with keeping it as sort of hard on the sleeve nerves, like raw nerve as possible.
And then when those songs that happen immediately, that the ones that just are lightning in a bottle, do you do you go back and tweak those, or do you think there's a reason why it happens so quickly? I'm not going to touch it.
There's usually always edits to make. I'm pretty picky about stuff, I would say. So I would say there's not usually a case where I don't change a few things, whether it's a word choice or like adding a bar of four. But like Vending Machines is the first track on my new record.
Yeah.
I made almost no changes to that song.
Oh,
It's the only
really?
song on the record that came like that. Um, and it's the first one I wrote, and I wrote it again in that like very sad state, but it came very quickly, and I barely touched it after it was done, and to me, it's still a great representation of my favorite kind of writing that I do, and yeah, it was very easy, it felt like at the time.
It's an interesting title for a song. I love the song, and such a great opener to the album, um, because it's not a poetic image.
Yep.
Um, but I remember I took a poetry class in college. It's one of these classes where it's like 10 of us in a creative writing class, and we all wrote just horrific poetry. And we had to share. Well, we're like 20 years old. I mean, none of us were poets. I was an English major, but none of us were poets, and you sit around, you got to write one poem a week, and it was awful. But the professor was a poet, and he talked about the beauty of one of his poems. He has a line in one of his poems talking about the beauty of the word garage. And I thought that was really cool because garage is not a poetic image, but the word itself is. I don't know, it got me thinking about, because machine is a word like that that has that kind of poetic, but the image itself isn't poetic, but the word is.
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I find so much beauty in the very liminal and mundane, especially again growing up on the prairies where you've seen it. It can be so bleak. There's just miles of canola and gas stations and strip malls. But when you grow up around it and it's all you know, it becomes sort of comforting. Like even when I go to New York for work and press and stuff, I'm just so completely overwhelmed. And I'm just like, get me back to a really crappy motel in Claire's home where I can feel normal again. I would also say that when I'm writing, I like to listen to words for how they sound. As you know, the word garage is a great example, but just cadence and the way that something feels in your mouth, for lack of a better term. is so important to me when I'm writing a song to sing because I think people really connect with that whether they know it or not.
Yeah, that's what poetry is. I mean, poetic language is it's about the sound as much as it is the image. So do you I want to talk about the ritual. So do you have a favorite chair, any quirky parts to the process, favorite time of day, favorite room, natural light? Does that matter?
Um, I would love to say that it did, but I'm transient so often and I move so much that I have had to get comfortable just finding any space where I can put a notebook and my phone because I'll go between paper and my notes app to get everything done. It's a bit weird. Um, I do tend to prefer night writing, late night, but again, I feel that that sometimes can influence the darkness of the material, so I'm trying to move away from that a bit. But late night is my favorite. Um, I do like to write with a pen if, that's part of if I can first get something down, I like it to be with a pen, and then I'll move it over to my phone, and then I'll write it all down again when it's finished. So it's a bit back and forth, and it doesn't really make any sense. But when I know it's almost done, I will write it out again to commit it to memory almost.
Okay, many questions here, many
Yeah,
follow-ups.
yeah.
First of all, talk about this to songwriters. Every interview, does color of ink matter and brand of pen?
Black, always. And, this pen is my favorite right now. It is a Pentel metal tip. I don't know, but it's a
Nice.
very inky. I like the dramatic of an inky pen, and I hate when the ballpoints get dry. So I need something with some juice.
Wait, the drama of the inky pen.
Yeah, well,
Elaborate.
I write like a child, so it something about seeing the chicken scratch when you're really trying to get through a thought. I don't know, I just like it. It feels kind of archaic, I guess. I don't know what it is. I just really enjoy it.
Do you have a preferred type of notebook?
I use the yellow lined paper pads
Oh, yeah.
that just flip, and I have about a pallet of those at all time that I just rip through. I put everything in those.
Do you save them? Are they somewhere when they're full?
Usually I transcribe them. I'll put them in my I know it's like so tedious, but I just love having everything organized. I'm a bit anal in that way. So I will go through them kind of once a year and then I'll look for things I like and I'll just make a big note, like a Google Doc. And then I'll just be like, okay. And then I can throw it away because I struggle with clutter pretty severely.
That's amazing. So there's a lot of switcheroos of you.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I just so I can get this straight. So you start when it comes to lyric writing, you start with pen and paper,
Yeah.
then move to the notes app. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Typically. Yep.
And then what are you doing on the notes app after it's been moved over there? Are you doing editing there?
I think I'm doing most of my editing there. I don't like to have my phone close when I start writing something because it's too easy for me to get distracted. So the kind of idea is that if I get even a verse down on paper, then I'll move it over to my phone and then my thumbs can move quicker than my hand can move when I write. I'll try and get most of the idea down. I'll make all my edits in there. And then when it's done, I'll write it out in full again on that same piece of paper.
So the final copy, then the final
Yes.
version is actually handwritten.
Yeah, and then I'll write it down again on a Google Doc to send to whoever it's being sent to for absolutely no reason at that point.
So so why the writing so it's perfect in the notes app. So then why write it perfect? I'm not judging you, by the way, to be clear.
Oh, no, that's fine. I
Why
judge me a
go
little.
yeah, so why go so then if it's perfect in the notes app, why then write it perfect back on the notebook?
I think again, it's a bit of a ritual as we're talking about it. It commits it to memory for me. And because when I write a new song, I very often like to road test them before I record them. So I'm trying to get comfortable playing and singing it as soon as humanly possible. So if it's written that day, I want to be able to play it and sing it that night. And so the writing it down kind of commits the lyrics to memory in a more serious way than typing it, I find.
Well, there's research actually that shows that people who take notes, uh, they've done this research with college students and find that college students who take notes with pen and paper have far greater recall than taking notes on a computer.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that. I did not graduate high school, but if I had taken notes, I can tell they would have stuck because that's how I seem to remember things best. But it is a bit of a chaotic system, and it speaks a lot to the kind of like person that I am, I think, which is very like organized in some and then a complete and total mess.
But that's what I love about the ritual. I mean, these things don't have to make sense. It doesn't matter. I mean, we
Yeah,
all do things that I mean, I never write and revise in the same chair. There's no reason. There's nothing about that chair behind me, but it doesn't matter. I just don't like to do it in the same place. I mean, I interviewed John Darnielle once, and he told me he wrote an entire album at the dining room table, and his quote was, "That's where the mojo was." Who cares?
you never know.
So, I want to get back to the New York thing because, I mean, I've grown up we live outside of DC and it's where I'm from and in the suburbs. And so, but I know that I'm a big hiker and I go out west a couple times a year, for hiking. And when I am in these prairies or areas that I've been to, and it's like I can't my mind is flooded with ideas, but they're different types of ideas than if I were walking the streets of Manhattan. Um,
Totally.
it's much more when you have those kind of for me at least, if you have, if there's expanses around you, it's a much deeper thought and it's a much more kind of why am I here kind of thing, questioning all of those things, not questioning, but just think about all the things rather than the immediacy of, walking down the street in Manhattan. So, uh, do you, can you write in those crowded places at all or no?
Um, yes, I think I can write a different kind of song. I have
Yeah.
written in hotel rooms in places like, you know, DC even and New York and like the whole Northeast, it's jammed and the West in the States too, just so many people. So I do find when I get a moment alone, I can write. It comes from a place of feeling very alone in crowded places,
Hmm.
which I think is a common sentiment for a lot of people that come from more space. But then when I'm in wide open space, it's again very existential, just like you're saying. So I definitely prefer to write with more space. And yeah, just a bit more of a relaxed environment. It can be a little overstimulating for sure.
Um, do you, what about the role of movement? Whether it's, and there's like different types of movement. So let's talk first about walking, hiking, biking, make self locomotion. Do you get a lot of ideas when you're in motion?
Oh yeah, always. I'm also a big hiker. Love to be outside. My daily walk is very important. And when I'm at home, I'm just kind of always needing to be busy with my hands. It's usually washing dishes or doing a job that kind of doesn't need to be done until later, but washing the dishes is a great example because it's so meditative and I get so many ideas. I was a cook for 10 years. I have my papers. That was my job before I went to songwriting. So there's something so almost like the flow state of being on stage about washing dishes or doing your walk. So it's very important to me for sure. And if I don't do it, I just get bunged up like everybody else, I think.
So the one quote I give every songwriter is actually exactly about what you're saying. And Agatha Christie said the best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes. She actually said that. So I quote that all the time because um the idea that the eureka moments happen when our brains are engaged in unconscious activities, right? When our brains are engaged in activities that require no conscious thought, whether it's um, vacuuming, mowing the lawn, gardening, doing dishes, and I'm fascinated by. Yeah, that's why we get our best ideas in the shower. I'm fascinated by when those ideas happen. I mean, the problem is you can't try to make them happen because then they won't. The second you say, "Oh, I'm gonna wash the dishes," to have a eureka moment, it's not gonna happen. So anyway, do you get okay, so do you get ideas while you're doing those things, or are those things you do to take a break from the creative aspect?
Those are things that I do uh, to give myself a break and hopefully open a channel. to have more ideas. Last kind of 2 summers, I've had to pick up part-time work, and I started gardening for money, like landscaping. And I remember feeling I wasn't touring as much as I would have liked to have been, and I think I just remember feeling pretty listless and kinda lost, and just I would sort of say, "I'm not gonna put pressure on myself to write. I just need to go to work. I just need to make money right now, and so I need to just go to work and pull the weeds." And I would go, and as soon as I just kind of settled into, like, I'm weeding for 8 hours, it's so relaxing, I can just listen to, like, brown noise or music or a podcast. Um, After about an hour, you just start to feel those things, those ideas kinda popping in. So I think, I would love to say that, I'm always getting ideas when I'm doing that stuff, but it's just necessary to do to open the channel.
It also makes me think about the difference between gardening, which again has much more of a metaphysical kind of worldly existence thing that I don't think folding laundry would do. Even though they both involve repetitive motions, it makes me wonder if we're more prolific when we're doing things that monotonous activities that bring us closer to nature, literally.
Totally, and removing the self. Like, I just genuinely believe that so much of, so much emotional angst is this, like, centering of self and ego, and when you're working in dirt, it's just so easy to remember it doesn't fucking matter, Sorry, not to, but it is just remembering that it really you're not important in that moment, and that's really comforting to me in a very weird way.
And do you have the phone with you? Do you have thousands of voice memos of that just that go is your phone filled with voice memos of melodies and lyrical ideas that you get when you're doing things outside of deliberate songwriting?
Yeah, totally, I think, and that's always such a fun thing to do, just revisit them, but I do have a pretty good collection usually.
I have all those things. I never go back. I don't know, like, do you really go back and let's be honest, do you we all have them. I'm like, but do you I don't know, maybe you do. Do
Uh,
you go back
uh,
to those old ideas?
I'll go back to them. I would agree with you, though, that I'm never like, "This was gold, why didn't I write it?" I think if it's really good, I'm gonna write it in the moment 9 times out of 10. There's been a couple times, like the last song on my new record, that last verse on the last song was a verse in another throwaway thing that I had never found a home for, but I read this one verse and I was like, "That's really ties the whole thing together so well, even though it was not intended for this song at all." So very rarely that does happen, but I agree with you. It's not very often.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. On the new album, which is there one song that has the most mix and match parts from ideas that maybe were on your phone or something you had, kind of like mixing and matching? Was there one song on there more than the others?
It's definitely the last tune, that Lucky song. The chorus was something totally different. The the third kind of verse, which is, I guess, sort of like a pre-chorus, that was also in another song that was never going to have legs to live a life of its own. And then again, the last verse, I just found it in my phone, and I was like, "Holy smokes, that's just so." I just really liked it.
So are there things that you have that you're just, okay, I need to find this. There's got to be a home for this somewhere. We all have those ideas. It's like, it's not a fully formed idea, but it needs to go somewhere else. I'm just waiting for a place to put it.
Yeah, I have a lot more of those than I've actually used. That was probably the first and only time that's happened to me in 3 albums, but it was pretty crazy. So now I guess I know I can't delete all. I would love to clear the clutter, but I guess I can't.
Which is the song on the album? Was there a song on the album that you felt like giving up on because it was just a real struggle to finish?
Mm, hmm. You know what? That "Sick of Myself" song took me a long time to write, and I think because I was playing around with, open tunings and different ways of playing guitar, I was feeling discouraged a lot when I would try and write a progression for it, and then when I was writing the words, I just sort of was like, "Oh, this is not what I want, this is not what I want," um, and it took a lot of work, and I sent about 6 versions to the guy I've worked with, and he was like, "These are all good. You just need to pick something and say it with your kind of full chest, or it's gonna feel like you're not saying it." And then I ended up just going back to one of the first versions of it that I wrote, oddly enough. But it took a lot of finagling, taking a chorus away, adding different chords. It was a bit of a struggle. I almost threw it away, but I'm glad I didn't because people really seem to be resonating with that one.
So the flip side, which is the song, what was the fastest song on the album to write?
Vending machines for sure.
Oh, it was. Okay. And that was the
Yeah.
one that was the one take one.
Yeah, I think it took me 2 hours top to tail, which is pretty crazy.
So where were you when you got that idea?
I had just gotten back from a tour in Ontario in November, so winter had started out there. I made no money. There was no one at the shows. It was a very depressing time. I had to get in the studio. I had no new songs. I got home, separated from my partner of 4 years. She really wanted to have kids. I didn't want to have kids. And I was at home at our old apartment getting ready to move after I'd been home from this really depressing tour for about a week. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is so ridiculous. It was just, I think it was like 11 in the morning. It was really sunny. It was snowing. Uh, and I just felt so, so sorry for myself and so fragile. And I just remember kind of plunking out those chords and yeah, it was like something else did it for me, which doesn't happen very often. So it was pretty special.
So you weren't I love the title. I know we've talked about this already, but you weren't so if I'm hearing you correctly, you weren't in a place where you saw vending machine. It was, "Oh, that's gonna be the song title." It's such a unique image. So how did that actual image come to you?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, a lot of my touring up until the last couple or 3 years has been largely Canadian. So my frame of reference for the things that I would be seeing are gas stations, parking lots, like outside kind of courtyards with vending machines. And I just remember I was really into the idea of liminal spaces at the time. Like I knew that on this next record, I was like, I want to talk about that because being in a van for most of your job really accentuates those feelings of people getting older and you feeling like you're exactly the same. And um, I don't really know how it came to me, but I just I just remember thinking like, am I really giving up a pretty good relationship and my chance at a family for standing around in parking lots picking out a snack to eat at 10 o'clock after I've just gotten back and we've unloaded the van. Like, is this really the choice I'm going to make? So yeah, I just think it was calling to mind what I'd seen a lot of.
I interviewed Anthony Doerr, the writer, once. He wrote a book called All the Light We Cannot See, which won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And I asked him about writer's block, and he said, I don't believe in writer's block. He called writer's block a failure of courage. And ooh, right, I know. That was my response. It was like, it gives
Oh,
me chills to even say that because his thing is, no one's that precious. Just write the damn thing. Don't be afraid to write the bad stuff. And that really has always stuck with me that he doesn't believe in it. It's a myth because something is up there. So I'd love to get your take on that. Is it a failure of courage? And is it something that if you do get writer's block, are there things that you do to kind of break through it?
I mean, that's a super inspiring statement, and I'm gonna remember that the next time I say to myself, "I have writer's block." Yeah, I mean, I think that I also understand that sometimes it's just not there. I'm okay with taking breaks, I will say. I'm okay with even if it's a month, I'm okay with taking a break if it's really not there and not forcing it. But I also, for this record, I think I wrote close to 40 or 50 songs, and a lot of them were bad. So, I have pushed through it. I know the importance of it, but there's also power in just saying, like, I don't want to do this right now. I don't have anything to say. I need to go outside. I need to go see my family. I need to get on the phone with a friend. I need to read a book and then, letting it sort of show up for you. So I think it's both. I think it's important to write the bad stuff for sure, but it's also okay to take a step back.
Let's talk about books, then we'll end with that. So, I do find that songwriters, for the most part, are pretty voracious readers. I mean, I the songwriters I've interviewed have been around the longest. I don't think anyone has, none of them have said to me, "Yeah, reading's a waste of time." There's a reason why the best writers read a lot. So, I'd love to get your take on: are you an author person, a genre person? How do you decide what you're going to read, and who do you like to read?
Well, when I started spending more time in Tennessee, I was like, okay, I'm going to read 5 Cormac McCarthy books, which I realized really quickly was really sad.
As
And,
and by the way, that's every songwriter. There
I know.
are
I was like,
so
how
yeah.
unoriginal.
The no, 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 the big 3 are Cormac McCarthy, Kurt Vonnegut, and, Raymond Carver.
Steinbeck? Okay,
You
yeah.
know, it's funny you say Steinbeck has come up recently. Steinbeck I don't hear as often as the others, because the others are much more about economy of language, and it kinda makes sense. So anyway, please go ahead.
Well, so I started when I was down here with some Cormac McCarthy. Love the way he paints a picture. Don't love the way he writes about women, for example. Typically, when I'm picking what I wanna read, yeah, if it's related to where I am, uh, in geography, I find that really interesting because then I can go outside and sort of say like, "Oh, these are the trees he's talking about," like, "That's really cool." I j So this morning, I just finished Grapes of Wrath, which is why I mentioned Steinbeck, but that's, like, easily one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And I mostly it's the same as with any piece of art. I wanna read something and I wanna feel really captivated by it. I take a lot of recommendations. I read some Ocean Vuong, a couple months ago that just blew me away. There's no real rhyme or reason. I like the classics. I can't say I'm an author person. I just wanna read something that's gonna be human, and really personal. It's gonna make me feel something.
So, you pick based on where you are, that's,
Sometimes, yeah, or if there's a driving factor, like I know with Ocean Vuong, he's, a queer writer, so for me, that resonates a lot. Steinbeck, obviously, the Grapes of Wrath is really topical at this time in, I think, American history and world history, so that was a difficult, but it feels more captivating if I can draw something to it from the outside world or my own life, like most people.
so when you finish something, is your like my first thought when I finish something is never let me read something else by that person. It's always I want to get another voice in my head. Only because I just, I feel like let me just get as many as I can. So is your reaction I need to read something else by that person or something else different entirely?
It depends. Like with the Cormac McCarthy thing, I was like, I just want to read a few of his books. But then I found myself after 3, I was like, this is a lot and I'm feeling really depressed. Um, I think it's good to switch it up. Although after finishing that book, I think I just need a break. I just need to sit with it because it was such a heavy outro that I'm struggling to know what I could read next that would move me in a similar way.
So you go by recommendations. I is that what you typically go by?
Yeah, my mom reads a lot. She's crazy. She reads like a book a week. So I check in with her, and my other songwriter friends are always great for that as well. Yeah, so I go by recommendation a lot.
Do you read more than one book at a time?
No, I would love to say I have the capability, but I'll get distracted and I won't finish either.
Oh, see, I do that, but it's got to be different. Like one fiction, one nonfiction. They can't overlap at all in genre.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I could try that probably, but I find better to just force myself to get through it.
Yeah, and one is typically not like one might be heavy, one not as heavy. So, for example, I just finished a book on the B-52s, because our daughter lives in Athens, Georgia, and she went to UGA. So you've got to read about the history of Athens. Um, and I'm also reading a brand new book called Deadwood. It's a nonfiction book. Um, and it's about the town of Deadwood and the whole gold rush in the Dakotas. And it's also, I just started it, but it's also about the shameful treatment of Native Americans in that time and in the rush for gold. Um, It's a fantastic book. It's disturbing and it's horrible and it's shameful, but it's riveting. So I just started it, but I don't think I needed a book to balance that, which is why what better book than a book, a group who writes Love Shack. I
I
mean,
was just gonna say, Love
yeah,
Shack, it's classic.
I mean, it was but Dead was a great book.
I'm gonna check that out.
And I'm not really a history person at all, though I started to get into it more, but it's really, really, really well researched. It's all about that time. The other book that you might be interested in, the writer, his name is Joe Wilkins, and he's from Montana, but he's a creative writing professor at a university, small school out in, I think, Washington State. But his books are all about that wide open space. They're novels. Um, Fall Back Down Till I Die is one of the ones. I have to get
Okay.
the newest one blanking on me, but his name is Joe Wilkins, and he talks about land rights issues, um, because that's where he's from, and but the descriptions of those prairies, um and the books are also narrative. They're great stories, and I've always said that if you can get a poet, because he's a poet, that's actually what he is. He's a poet. If you can get a poet who can write a good narrative driven story, there's nothing better than that, because you get figure of language and a page turner,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic.
Okay, I'll check that out too. Yeah,
All right,
that's
last
great.
question then. Can you, if you're reading a book and you just don't like it, do you have to finish it, or can you just set it aside and say, I'm not going to finish this?
No, I can put it aside. I'll
Not
just
need No hesitation with that answer whatsoever.
no, I mean, I force myself usually to try and get to 100 pages, and once I've gotten to 100, if I'm like, "This is not doing it for me in one way or another," I'll put it down.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug. My book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form, and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.